Hello everyone and welcome to the DWIH New York. My name is Dietrich Wolf-Henner and I'm the Program Manager of the German Center for Research and Innovation, also known via the German acronym DWIH. We are very happy to host a conversation today about the US launch of the Coronarchive, a German digital platform for collecting photos, memories and experiences related to the pandemic. COVID-19 has changed our lives and is still changing it. How are you? This question a couple of months ago, we would just say, oh yeah, great. Well, no, I'm good, thank you. Nowadays, you hear much more often, hanging in, well, it's okay. So working from home, doing sports from home, entertainment that's shrinked to home entertainment, and a night out became takeout. It's not the same than before. A Zoom social distancing cocktail hour is hardly a substitute for seeing friends and family in real life. So in New York, we are in the 4th month of the lockdown, and just ask yourself, do you remember how you thought about the crisis in April? Did you have an idea when it might end, when you will return to your office or to your gym? So these things, or like if you noticed signs in your neighborhood of encouragement, or if you have any idea when you will travel again, this all could be thoughts or items for the Coronarchive. Yesterday, I saw a post of an editor-in-chief of a major German newspaper, and he added a photo of himself alone in the newsroom, #CoronaTimes. He was wondering about the situation that he's in a newsroom that is usually totally busy, and it was empty and just him in it. And we can all be sure that this photo and the text and the hashtag will be found in the newspaper archives later on. But what about your discoveries, your pictures, or your feelings? The Coronarchive, created as a project by researchers of the University Bochum, the University of Hamburg, and the University Giessen, offers you all the opportunity to add your experiences and digital items to their worldwide archive. Our conversation today will be about the creation and the purpose of the archive, and as well how you could get involved. Our speakers are Christian Brunnenberg, Professor of History Didactics at the University Bochum, Thorsten Lagge, Professor of Public History, University of Hamburg, Benjamin Röhrs, Research Associate at the International Center for the Studies of Culture at the Justus Liebig University Gießen, and last but never least, Nils Steffen, Research Associate at Public History at the University of Hamburg. And my dear colleague, Julia Helmers, will moderate the discussion. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and I'm looking forward to the talk and the presentation.
Thank you so much for that introduction. All of you who are joining us, welcome. We're so happy you're here. For those of you who just joined, please feel free to write into the chat where you're joining us from and what your experience of the Coronarchive has been in maybe 1 or 2 words. And since we're here to learn about how to participate in this wonderful public archive, I want to start with a short poll. So you are going to see a poll appearing on your screen. It is asking you, have you added something to the Coronarchive yet? Yes, no, no, but I intend to. So take a minute or so and give us your answers. Wonderful. So we see here that we have 1 person who has already submitted to the Coronarchive. Thank you so much. I'm actually going to share the results with all of you so you can see what I'm looking at. So we see that one person has already shared, which is fabulous. Thank you for doing that. We see that 6 people have not, but 10 of you are all here at the right place, learning exactly how you will be able to share. So that's wonderful. And without further ado, that means I'm going to give the stage over to our experts. Christian Bunnenberg, feel free to take the floor.
So, hello everybody. I will begin, and I hope you can see the presentation. Okay. Yes, I will start with chapter 1. And the question, the Coronarchive, how did this happen? Okay, once upon a time, there was a tweet, and I can answer the question, how did this happen, quite precisely, because at the beginning of everything, there was an observation and a tweet. On March 22, this year, I looked out of the window, and it was a beautiful day in spring, sunny with a pleasant temperature, and it was a Sunday, usual a reason for joy. But on that day, the joy was a little clouded because since April 16, all shops in Germany were closed, all kindergarten, all schools, all restaurants, and also my university was closed on March 18. And I've only been back once before until this day. Okay, so I looked out on the window and think about whether this is now one of those open situations that have happened more often in history, situations where nobody knows what will be in half a year or in a year. And I had read a lot about this so far, but I've never had the feeling of living in such an open situation before. And then I thought about how this feeling can be described later in history books or in history lessons, because in the future, the historians will know how everything ended. They know about the good and the bad decisions, and they know about the consequences of those choices. But my feeling in the face of this open situation or other people's feeling, the worries, needs, and hope, they know nothing about it at this moment. And so I wrote these 2 tweets, and you can see the screenshot. And after I'd written the tweets, I put the phone away. And after a while, I saw that there was a discussion among the tweets. Benjamin had already pointed out the possibility of online platforms, and it was quickly clear that something has to be done quickly. With Thorsten Logge and Nils Steffen from Hamburg and Benjamin Röhrs from Gießen, we made an appointment for the next day to meet on Skype. And there we talked about the urgent question: how can this, seen as open, be documented? And how can as many perspectives as possible be documented? How can the everyday observations be secured? And how can they be made visible at the same time? And if we take care of it, how can it start as soon as possible? No research proposal could answer this question. We cannot write a big proposal, then wait 6 months for approval and then start. We needed a solution as soon as possible, and then we decided within 2 hours that we wanted to build an online platform. The platform should be open to all people. Everything that is uploaded should be visible again. And the name of the platform should be Coronarchive. That was on Monday, and on Tuesday we were online. With what we were online, Thorsten explains now. Thank you very much.
Yeah, hi, and welcome from Hamburg too. Thank you very much for having us here. So chapter 2 is the Coronarchive, but I wanted to say something about events first, if you don't mind. So what we are thinking about is, what are events? And there's maybe you don't know that, but there's a theory about events happening in academia. And we can just say that events are perceived as different to their everyday. This is a theoretical presumption here. Discursive subjects of social communication, and they are transformative. So what happened in the pandemic? We can easily say that the pandemic is different to our everyday. I mean, we all experience that up to today. We can also say that it's discursive because we are talking about this a lot. We do this in this very moment. But is it transformative? We don't know yet. We don't know yet because sometimes people forget, and we are in the midst of the process, so we don't know if this will be seen as transformative later. But I think some people already feel that it is transformative, and it's very important to take this very seriously. So what we can say, and this is a very dense and short version of the theoretical aspects here, but that communication leads to traces, and these traces can be sources for future historiography. And this is one of our main points. How can we add to more traces? How can we find more sources as future historians? So this is a message to us being future historians too at the very moment we are in right now. And this is why we built the Coronarchive. I will take you to the site in a second. You can see that. So what we have here is the English version of the Coronarchive, and I don't want to go through the whole site with you. You can check this yourself easily, and Benjamin will lead you through the process very soon.
I just want to interrupt for 1 second. I don't know if anyone else has this, but I'm looking at a blank screen. I'm seeing some nods from our other panelists. So I don't know if you want to double check your screen share or stop sharing your presentation and take us to a new screen share of your website, if that works. Otherwise, I'm happy to, Jared can lend some help and we can pull up the website as another screen share.
I think
there we go. That's
now.
perfect.
Here we go. I'm sorry for this. So what I can't do is I don't want to lead you through all the page. Now you can check this easily yourself. I said that, but I want to show you the map of our English site. And there you can see that we are here centered at Germany. This is because we want to collect English language contributions from Germany first. And then of course it's possible to add objects worldwide. So what you can see here is there's not much happening here. But if we just switch over to the German side, and I will do this in a second, and then you can see that it loads not that fast no more, because when you see at our map, which is loading at this very moment, and it takes a long time because we have very many objects on there, and it takes a very long time. So what you can see here is that we have about 2,500 published objects in Germany. And if we switch here, and this is a very interesting feature of the page, you can just go by clicking on those numbers, and then you will be led to the regions. And then you can see that we have lots of German regions here included. And if we go to Hamburg, and I'm always interested in showing you part of my hometown, because you may be interested to see what happens in St. Pauli, because maybe some of you know this part of Hamburg. Then you can see that if you go to the Reeperbahn, which some of you may have heard about, then you can see that we have objects here showing the same things you know from New York. Empty places where usually is a lot of life. So, but Benjamin will talk about the page later, and let me switch back to the presentation, which I hope you can see now. So this works better. What is the Coronarchive? The Coronarchive is a crowdsourcing platform for everyday experiences.
Professor Lugge, I'm so sorry to interrupt one more time. We're still looking at the Hans-Albers-Platz am Freitagabend.
That's nice, because you have to visit this one time. So give me a second to change this.
Absolutely, take your time. And for all of those, while Professor Lugge pulls up his presentation, for all of those listening in, I would like to remind you that you are welcome at all times. In fact, I encourage you at any time to be typing in your questions or even comments in the Q&A. You also have the option of upvoting a question that you think is really important and would definitely like to hear from. So once the presentation is over, you have the opportunity of asking what is most important to you. So I encourage you all to use the Q&A function.
All right, and here we are back, hopefully. So what is the Coronarchive? It's a crowdsourcing platform for everyday experiences related to COVID-19. What we want to collect everything that is important for you as people. The archival contributions depend on what you think is important, and this is what we collect. It is a citizen science tool for decentralized self-documentation and representation. So you can show what COVID-19 and Corona means for you in your life. It is an online archive for cross-medial speech act. This gets a little theoretical. We can discuss this later if you want to. And it's a repository for COVID-19 related research and documentation. So if you're a researcher, you can upload your material, your interviews, whatever you're doing into this platform, and it will be documented here and be shown to other people who can use the material. It's also a low barrier container for digital artifacts to inform future historiographies. And so far, and also, it is kind of a representation of privileged encounters to the pandemic, at least in Germany, where you can see that not everybody has real problems. Real problems here meaning, oh, I can't go to school as usual, or my work is different, or I can't buy ice cream in the way I used to do this before. So the Coronarchive enables to document your individual perspectives on the pandemic. It broadens the available amount of traces and sources. And of course, it is an option to research the everyday life of Corona right now. And of course, later, hopefully, if we get long-term archivation of this project. You can discover correlations between privilege and crisis response. How do we react to the crisis? How do we react if we are in a privileged situation? What can we do if we are not? And it's very interesting for us to see that if you are in serious problems, you don't contribute to the archive at the moment. You do other things. You need to survive, or you need to take care for your loved ones. So what we want is we want to start and motivate conversations. And of course, we want to be able to curate now. Some words about the background. It's an Omeka-driven installation. So this is from our US partners. You can see this on our page. I just switched one slide because there's very technical aspects here. We don't really want to discuss this into so much detail, but the platform is open source, it's free. So if you want to start your own project, you can do this easily. And as you can see on this map, many do. So this is a map of all collection projects we know so far today. It's many projects. Some are very small, some are very specific because they ask for certain contributions in certain aspects and perspectives, and some are more broader as our archive is. So let me finish with three main projects that are internationally important. So one is a Journal of the Plague Year, which is a US archive and the forerunner for US-driven everyday collections. So if you want to see what's happening there, they have more than 5,000 contributions today. So this is the main US platform, and we are talking with them a lot today, how to develop the platforms, how to get this into comparison, and how to discuss this in the future. We are in Germany, and you can see the Center for Contemporary and Digital History in Luxembourg also has a COVID memory project. And we three are, let's say, a main hub for international research related to COVID-19, and we want to expand our efforts and try to make the collections as huge as possible to get international comparisons into our scope in the future. So that's for me. It was. I know it's rushing through the things here, but you can ask me all questions later or send an email if you want to. So let me go on. I think it's Benjamin.
Yes, thank you, Thorsten. Okay, in this third chapter, I'm going to give you a little impression of the submission process, our moderation routine, and I'm going to show you some examples of already submitted media. First, we visit our website, coronarchive.org.
Trying to take a minute, just start.
Okay. On this website, you'll find in the menu a point is called Shared Your Experience, and this will lead you to our submission form. We will see in a minute or in a second rather. Yeah. This is the German site. Yes, right. And then here on Share Your Experience. This is our submission form, and if you want to contribute something, you just type in a title for the media to be uploaded, and by clicking on Dateien auswählen, which is still German, you can upload your material, followed by a description and the date the file was created. The next step would be to list any visible or audible persons. And then you say where the medium was created. And here you see the map tool. And on this map, you can also tag the very specific location by setting a concrete locator. And this information feeds our global card, which Thorsten already showed you. Next section would be the rights and licenses section. And here it is impossible that we generally use Creative Commons licenses by default, which means that any submitted media would be published under this, you can see CC BY SA 4.0 license. What does that mean? Here we can switch to the presentation again. Yes, right. So this is our default license, which gives you the permission to copy and redistribute the material in any medium or format, and the permission to remix and transform and to build up upon the material for any purpose, even commercially. But at the same time, you have the obligation to give appropriate credit, which means author, title, and license. And if you adapt this material, the new piece of work has to be distributed under the same license as the original. So this is our default license. Now we switch back to the homepage again. If you don't agree to this license, you are able to choose another license, and you'll find a link on the page where you can get more information. Yeah, right. More information on possible other Creative Commons license if you don't want to choose this license, which is given by default. Okay, so the next step would be that you enter your screen name. This will be published and can also be fictional. And this name will also serve for the citation. Below, there's this field for the real name, an email address, and as well your place of residence. This is not going to be published, but registered in our system for legal reasons and for us to have the possibility to get in touch with you in case of any questions. The last step is to agree to our guidelines, including terms of use and private policy, and furthermore, an assurance not to violate any personal or copyrights. And if this agreement is given in this last field, the data will be submitted to our system, which looks like the next slide in the presentation. Thank you, Thorsten. Yeah, right. So this is what our moderators see after anyone has submitted material and where they take care of submissions. First, they would check if everything is formally complete and correct. Let's have a look on the next slide. Yeah, here we can see the information given for the material, and we check it if everything is formally correct. And a second step would be to check the media content. And in general, we publish everything, even the 80th photo of a toilet roll or a face mask. However, there are some guidelines we follow and things we do not publish. We do not publish any contributions that has no recognizable relation to the corona crisis or violates applicable law. And we do not publish contributions contains hate speech or discriminates against people or serve advertising purposes and do not reveal any documentary intention. And we do not publish any contribution that was obviously uploaded without having the copyright. In these cases, we refuse the upload and write an email to inform the respective person. And sometimes we also have to write them because some information is missing, or if they forgot to attach the media or anything else. Okay, here we are in the example section, just for you to have a glimpse of what we get. Okay, but yeah, sometimes we have to refuse the publication, but in most cases everything is fine and correct, and then we submit it. Then we publish the media. And this was were just some examples you've just seen. And to visit the whole collection, yeah, you visit the website again and click on Browse Items, or on the German page, as Thorsten already showed, on Objekte durchstöbern. Okay, that was my part. Now Niels will continue. Thank you.
I will, thank you. So in this chapter 4, I would like to talk about our communication in the media, especially in the social media. With this project, we try to democratize memory. The Coronarchive is a free and open online archive to which everyone can contribute and which is accessible to all. For people to be able to use the archive, on the one hand, they must know that the archive exists and where to find it. On the other hand, we must make people aware that all memories are worth documenting. So it is not enough to provide only an archive, we must also try to engage and empower people. That is some kind of a big or great idea, and we all four have far too little time to fill this idea with enough life, but we do things. You surely ask yourselves if we have some kind of a media strategy and what that strategy is. Let me say, no, we don't have a strategy yet, at least not one that you could call that, but we are active. Our motto is sharing is caring, become a part of history. With this, we not only want to point out the enormous importance of everyday experiences and found objects for future historical research, but also to convince people that their voices are important in order to reflect the diversity of contemporary experiences in this democratic discourse of the corona crisis and to preserve it in the long term. We want to give our users the feeling that they are not isolated and alone. This can only be achieved through direct and quite simple communication, which not only focuses on the scientific value of the project, but is also somehow inspiring and entertaining. And now just a few words on our social media activities. We are active on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. And we know that we reach different audiences there. Via Facebook, we mainly reach an adult audience about 30 to 60 years old, interested in the submissions that have been posted in the Coronarchive. Shared media reporting about the project is also well received there. Via Twitter, we reach, based on the personal networks of the team, an adult audience which is mainly active in science or journalism. In addition to shared submissions from the Coronarchive, this channel is brilliant for us to build networks. And Instagram reaches quite a younger audience, up to about 30 years old. Here we focus more on interaction and call for participation. And we might want to become active on TikTok as well, but we have not developed a Coronarchive dance yet. So let's see. What are we doing? I would just want to highlight 4 activities, 4 examples. One, we share submissions, of course. We try to encourage with every posting to consider whether one has had similar or maybe completely different experiences to the example presented. We want to encourage self-reflection. 2, we try to provide a small look behind the scenes. Communication at eye level can only succeed if we as a team are visible and report on our activities and experiences. Number 3, we organize small activities that at first glance have nothing to do with the archive. For example, we have a Coronarchive playlist on Spotify. Together with our followers, we collect songs that guide people through the current crisis. And number 4, until the beginning of May, we organized a major campaign together with the Körber Foundation. Every 2 years, this foundation organizes the German Federal President's History Competition. With this cooperation, we called on young people up to the age of 21 to document the changes in their everyday lives. We received more than 1,100 entries from over 1,500 children and young people, all of whom will now become a part of the Coronarchive. That's fantastic for us. More than 4,000 submissions at all and round about 3,000 followers on our channels are quite a proof of the great interest in the experience of other people and the opportunity to share own experiences and to secure them for the future. So just a few words about the future. There will be many challenges for us. With an English website, we want to start with English social media channels in the near future. Plus, the longer the pandemic lasts, the less people want to think about it. So we have to develop a communication that can overcome the inner resistance to think about COVID-19. We also have to think about how we can activate minorities so that the archive becomes much more diverse. We do not want a merely middle class and white narrative in the archive. We want stories that really represent society. So everything we do is actually not enough, but still only possible because all 4 of us are crazy enough and run this project as some kind of a hobby. And because the public is very interested. Over 100 newspaper articles have been published in Germany so far. We have been guests at major radio stations and several TV reports have been broadcast. All this is far bigger than we thought. But now we have told enough. Thank you very much for your attention. It's time for your questions. So back to Julia, I guess.
Thank you guys so much. That was a wonderful introduction to all of this work that I really love hearing the origin story of the tweet and the fact that you came together so quickly and within 1-2 days you had something up and running. So I really love hearing that background story of how quickly this came to be. I see that there are already a few questions in the chat, and I promise both of those individuals we will get to you because those are very important questions. But one of the things that came up in your presentation and that I was thinking about is that in some way, your work as historians and with the Coronarchive is really doing the reverse of what we expect historians to do. Rather than going back and looking at the past, as a lot of historians have done, looking at sort of the 1918 Spanish flu, you have really switched what we associate with history and are thinking ahead. Can you comment a little bit about how that has changed your practice? And I open that to any of you, so Thorsten, go for it.
Yeah, I might want to start here. This is a question we always get, and it's very complicated. As a historian, to be that actively involved in at least building up the archive, we should normally research in and write about the material that's been in that. And the thing is that we are not only historians, we are also citizens, and we are experiencing this COVID-19 thing as you all do. And as citizens, we are engaged in everything that changed since March, or in some countries much earlier. And so what can we do? We can just sit there and pretend to be like excluded or just way apart from everything happening around us, or we could try to adopt to the situation and to develop something that makes sense for us as historians and as citizens, and maybe for some people like the 85-year-old lady that's using our archive to, yeah, kind of deal with the situation that is so different to everything she experienced before. And so this was our idea. there's one problem. We may not write about our project because we are part of the project. So we are kind of being researched in the future, which is okay when I think about the numbers we have here.
One of the other things that I thought was interesting is on your website, you mentioned that you're already seeing, you can predict in the future that the Coronarchive will one day be over. This is something that we're putting behind us. And in this moment, I think that's a very hopeful message. It's something that in some way is kind of a relief to think about, yes, we're gonna move through it, no one knows what it's gonna be. How does this influence how you're going to mark the life of your archive? What date, what moment are you going to say, okay, we're going to close the archive, this situation, this time, this temporality of corona pandemic is over?
Okay, I can answer it. We didn't know that at this moment. Perhaps when there are no new contributions and the public means to get to the final decision that the pandemic is over now. Yes, we don't know it at this moment, and the platform is open, and it will be open. Yes.
Let me add a pragmatic answer here. We will need to stop the archive when our contracts run out, because we are all on non-permanent positions. So when we leave our institution,
yeah, good point, Thorsten.
That's a very good point. I actually want to shift a little bit, and this combines two questions, one that was submitted to us ahead of time and one that is in the chat at the moment. And that is sort of, what would you consider applying this endeavor to other areas, or do you see a crossover between your work as historians and maybe archives that are happening specifically in the scientific world? I have a question here that relates to this. I'm going to read it out. So this is from David DiGregorio from New Jersey. Have any unique discoveries been made via your archive that might enable us to have a deeper understanding of the mechanisms of the virus, right? So this is also thinking of what kind of hard science or scientific overlap there might be with your work or with the kind of collecting that you're doing.
Okay. I think we add the normal archives. And we are of the opinion that everyday life should be documented so that the history of COVID-19 can be worked through. And what will preserved? Administration documents, media products, but the snapshots of everyday life will not be preserved. And they are fleeting. And in our opinion, every perception is important. And so we want to document it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, Thorsten, please.
I don't know if we can make any deeper, or if we have any deeper understanding of the virus with the material we collect. I think this is complicated to say. One, because we have not yet experienced what is in the archive, going to every object and understanding what is there, what does it mean. But what we can learn about is how people react to the virus. So this is maybe a deeper understanding about a pandemic in late capitalism, but not about the virus itself. This may add to interdisciplinary research one day, and then we can talk about how people react, how they interfere, and how they react to certain parts of the supermarket being empty and others not. But we don't know if there will be any contribution to a deeper understanding of the virus itself.
And I actually think what you're talking about in terms of that everybody's memory counts, that personal experience of this is really important. And Thorsten, I actually want to go back to something that you mentioned in your presentation, was you said that a lot of the things that you were seeing, and again, for our audience, right, we're at the collection phase, right? So you guys aren't assessing any of these collections in any sort of scientific or historical way in terms of judging or categorizing, you're just collecting at this stage. And something you mentioned, though, is that you noticed that there were documentation of privileged encounters. So can you say, a little bit more about what you mean by that? And then I would like to take a question by Peter Rosenbaum, who's in the audience.
Sure. what is a pandemic and how do we react to it? I think if our life is at stake and we don't know if we will survive the situation, we may not want to document our experiences at first hand. We may want to fight the virus or the disease. So this is not happening in our archives. We have very, very few numbers of personal reactions to being involved into risky situations, or how people react to their own life being at stake in this situation. This is, you can count this on one hand. But what you can learn about is what people think is a problem in this time of COVID-19. So one problem being, I cannot shop properly. I cannot deliver myself to the market in several ways. I cannot work, or I cannot go to parties and make myself available to other persons or whatever. So the markets are disturbed. And this we can really see in our contributions, that all different kinds of social markets are changing in times of the disease, and how people deal with that. And they find it very interesting to document that buying ice cream is different than before. I mean, this is not really a problem. And I can imagine that some people elsewhere are discovering that the collapsing of the system, of the health system, is a much more, a much deeper problem. And of course, in Germany, and this is special, we have a very good working health system that takes care of at least everybody who needs to, unless it collapses. And we just prevented it from collapsing. And if you see the numbers in Germany, there is still a good chance that we have the capacities.
We lost you for a second there, but I heard you about the capacities. I mean, something that I thought was fascinating was when I was browsing through the objects that have already been uploaded, I noticed, one, that there's so many signs. Like, people have taken pictures of all different kinds of signs that mention Corona, that mention COVID, that say that there's a sermon to go at a church, you know? So just the different visualizations of what people are noticing in public space was fascinating to me. And then sort of maybe the more predictable images of no people, right? So we have all these public spaces and there's less people or very few people. But I really, sort of going off of what you said in terms of seeing the kind of submissions that you get, I think this question is a little bit more about who your audience is and how you might continue to develop that audience. So here's the question by Peter Rosenbaum. It says, Corona hit certain communities particularly hard, especially those who are underprivileged and usually do not have easy access to digital tools. How do you make sure that their voices are documented? Isn't there a danger that this archive becomes an echo chamber for those who are digitally fluent and are thus not as affected by the current pandemic as others? And it's a hard one. So whoever feels like they're ready for it, yes, please.
I could start. It's totally right, and we noticed this as well. Maybe in Germany, it's not that much seen as in the US, because we heard it in the news. For example, the Black people and other non-privileged people got in touch much more with COVID-19 than others. I don't know if we have such groups in Germany yet identified, but maybe in the future with a second wave that's coming, maybe, hopefully not soon. But we try to get in touch with different initiatives and institutions to collect, but we do not collect actively. So we don't grab the stuff and got it for our archive. We try to engage the people to do it actively. So that's quite a problem for people who are not digital natives or don't like to go to our website and upload stuff. There are other institutions as museums or other archives, non-digital ones, that collect many things, even face masks and so on. So there are other opportunities to collect these things. And that's the first step for us, to get in touch with those initiatives, for example, for disabled people or the Turkish community in Germany and so on, to make them aware we are here and you can collect our memories on Coronarchive.org. Yeah. Maybe the others want to say some more.
I mean, one thing that I noticed from your website, and this doesn't answer that question, but what you're saying is in terms of developing partnerships, right? So thinking strategically, I mean, all of us here are white, the four of you are white men. So maybe, you know, thinking in terms of the communities that we're part of as well, you know, again, and being part of a German organization, a German American organization, we often are sort of limited to some extent to the network that we move around comfortably. So something that, you know, that I know that you guys are working on and that I appreciate you said, Niels, is really strategically thinking about, okay, who can we partner with? What is a way that we can work with local organizations, local communities, where we would be reaching that audience and helping them also preserve their own memories, and that might be of a lot of value to them. So I know that you have a partnership with, I think, the
Yep.
Museum of Hamburg and also the Körber Stiftung. So maybe, Thorsten, you want to talk a little bit about the museum partnership you have, and afterwards, Christian, you can tell us a little bit more about the audience with students and younger people and how that's already bringing in a different demographic.
Sure. There's no real active communication because the museum has to deal with its own problems. We are partners in collecting. I hope the internet connection.
I think we just lost you, Thorsten.
So hope you're back.
Yes.
So I may be back now. Okay, great. So the Hamburg History Museum is collecting real items, like not digital items. And this is great because we cannot collect or handle any non-digital objects. I mean, it's complicated enough to get the digital objects into our database and to deal with it properly. And we have a cooperation with the Hamburg Medical History Museum too. So they are very specialized in the history of the plague in some kind, and our colleague Philip Osten there, also part of Hamburg University, is collecting special items in that area. So I think this totally makes sense to collect digital for us and then to leave it to the others to do the other objects. And of course, to work together with the international community of those collecting projects, because we are mostly using the same platform and we are suffering the same problems. So one question I saw was, can I get an email notification if my object is being moderated and published? Not now, but thank you for the question. We will put this into our efforts to reprogram the modules to have this in the near future. So you are working with us too. We are not only collecting items with you, we need your reactions and feedbacks and all the projects needed to develop a more sophisticated version of the platform for the future and to use it in future projects. So it's citizen science not only about COVID-19, it's citizen science by developing the tools we need to get crowdsourcing projects done. And you are helping us with every contribution you made, with every question, with everything you write us or tell us.
Okay, the project with the Körber Foundation was an attempt to make an invisible group visible in history, and we organized a join-in action for children and young people. And it was in competition for children and young people with a runtime about 6 weeks. And it was a cooperation between the Coronarchive and the Körber Foundation, which organized the history competition of the federal president every 2 years. And this is a very big competition in Germany. And there are about 2,000 contributions every 2 years. And the main target of this join-in action was to document and collect everyday lifetime of kids. And we have about 1,100 contributions from almost, I think, 1,500 children and young people aged from 3 years up to 21. And we got text, poems, songs, films, computer games, photo albums. It was a great pleasure and to look through all these contributions, and we will hope that historians in the future can use and will use these contributions as sources for their research. Yes.
Thank you so much. And I see that sort of our conversation about access is still continuing in the chat, which is great. I actually kind of want to pivot on that note sort of to Benjamin. Benjamin, because you are moderating content and with other, I believe, volunteers, there's a whole crew of you doing this. You're sort of one of the first people to see what's being submitted and from where. As much as you have to resist the analyzing of what you're getting in at this stage, what kind of gaps are you noticing or patterns are you noticing? We've talked about this a little bit already, but maybe just from your perspective of being the one who is making those decisions, will this go public? Is this not appropriate? What's that like for you?
Thank you, Julia. There are no really patterns, but we can look at a process going on. At the beginning, we had much or many contributions on loss, on material loss, and they vanished now after some weeks or months. But for example, the let's call it social loss and the desire to meet people, to gathering and have a social life, not in front of the monitor, but a real social life with physical meetings and so on. This is something like an evergreen, yeah, which is always the case. And at the point where the German government said that we are all we all have to wear a face mask, for example, the material on face masks and photos and so on was exploding. Yeah, and so we just, yeah, we can see this development and this process on a political level, even on the private level, and yeah, that's the connection, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I'm curious, on an average day that you are plugging in to look at all the submissions, how many submissions are you getting, and how long does it take you to evaluate a submission?
This very depends. If there was a media coverage, a podcast or anything else, the submissions increase. Mm-hmm. And there were also some days where there were no contributions at all. And this always depends on who is talking about us and where we are able to talk about us. So yeah, but the average time to moderate one submission would be maybe 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. It always depends if everything is correct, or maybe we would have to send an email to the person because the attachment is missing and so on. Yeah, but the average moderation case would be 3 or 4 minutes, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I'm curious as well, do the submissions that do not go public, do you keep a record of them? Is there an archive within the archive that's secret?
Yeah, absolutely. We do not delete anything besides if a person writes an email to us and says, I want to be deleted, then we delete it at all from our system. But let's say there is a contribution containing hate speech or anything else, we would not publish this, but we would archive it because we say, okay, this is a phenomenon of this time and it was submitted to us. But we, as like Thorsten mentioned, we are political citizens and we would not want to reproduce this hate speech, but in our back end of our database, it would stay and hopefully then be part of the long-term
I mean, I certainly feel like that would be the best paper of the future, of all the things that weren't public and all the things that were, and just sort of comparing that and looking at that in a contrasting way. I find that would be fascinating. We only have 5 more minutes, and this has been a really wonderful conversation. So I just want to thank you so much at this point already. I do see that there's one more question, and if there's any other last minute questions for our panelists, this is your moment to get it in. So what are your future plans for the archive? And on that note, do you plan to partner with other oral history projects or initiatives?
Yes, we want to partner with everybody who's interested in, but we do not have the time now to have strategic plans on that. We will definitely work together with the American platform, Journal of the Plague Year, and with the COVID-19 project in Luxembourg. So these are our main partners for the future. And I think there will be others joining us because there are many more who are so close and have the same problems that we can discuss properly with them. We are going to partner with archivists, of course. We do this already. We have an advisory board with archivists there, but we have to discuss legal matters too, because legal matters are so important and it's so complicated with the data protection rights in Germany and in Europe to easily get crowdsourcing projects done, that we need to discuss this to maybe get better legislation on that, because we need the protection on the one hand, but on the other hand, we definitely need to ease up on making public humanity projects possible. So this will be our main task, and whoever will join us in that is very welcome to do this. Just remember, we have 4 people in this project and like about 8 or 9 student researchers who help us with moderating it. And we are trying to do our other tasks as well, which is not easy at the moment, but we have a huge team now and we are suffering from time to time.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine that it's such a struggle that you started with this idea together, very small, and already it's really grown. And the fact that you now have an English website, I think that you will see that continue. For people in the audience, what are ways that they can get involved?
2 things. You can upload stuff. You can, of course, upload stuff in the United States and in the huge US project. You're very welcome there. And we will have these objects on our focus too, because we're working together. But you can also upload your material in the Coronarchive and bring it into international exchange if you want to. You can also, if you are a programmer and if you're interested in taking tasks and reprogramming modules in an open source software from the Roy Rosenzweig Center, which is in the United States as well, be welcome to ask us what tasks we have. And there are some. And the next point is, if you have non-privileged groups in your neighborhood, if you know anyone who's not being documented because they don't have the chance to do it themselves, but you want to help them being documented, do so. Get involved, get active, go into your neighborhood and start documenting yourself, or help people to document their experiences. I think this would be a great help, especially for elderly people, people that don't have the knowledge or the technical means to do it by themselves. Help them, and then it doesn't really matter where you upload your material, just do it.
Thank you so much. I think that's a very encouraging call to action, not only for us as individuals, but really thinking about our communities. And what my takeaway from your archive and from your wonderful project really is thinking more in terms of community, and that we can share our memories together. And to some extent, that digital access does allow us to come together from various places. I know that somebody in this call was tuning in all the way from Indonesia, and that is really quite incredible. So thank you so much for making this possible. Thank you for taking the time to be here today. For our audience, thank you so much for your questions, for asking hard questions, for getting involved. Please go to the website, please upload your materials, and most importantly, please spread the word. So thank you so much for everyone.
Thank you.
And for attendees, I'm going to let you find your own way out. So like an in-person event where you can leave the venue when you're ready, I'm going to leave this up. We're going to be here for a little bit, but feel free to see yourself out.